viewers, welcome to TV Metro Mail. You are watching Chit Chat. My today's guest is a politician and a passionate social worker. Amanda, thank you very much for joining us. Definitely we'll talk about politics, we'll talk about federal election, and our audience would like to know about you. How did you come to politics? So would you mind giving us an introduction to our audience about yourself?
Hi, my name is Amanda Cain. I was born and raised here in Scarborough Southwest, educated in corporate communications. My professional experience is in the world of not-for-profit youth economic development and also in arts and culture. So I worked in music and publishing for a number of years. I'm running as a Green candidate this election in the Scarborough Southwest region where I was born and raised. So I have a high vested interest in this neighborhood, and I'd love to see it flourish. I entered politics actually at the municipal level in a partisan perspective. Several years ago, I ran as a candidate in the Rouge. To be honest, I've been political my whole life. I've done a lot of nonpartisan work since I was a teenager, encouraging young people to vote and educating them on their civic responsibilities and duties. And that really led me into, my passion, because people would often say, well, I don't know who to vote for. I don't feel like anybody speaks to my needs. So when the Green Party put out a request for candidates in the 2019 election, I felt that I could bring a lot to the table. I was a teen parent. I have lived experience with poverty. And I've been working on eradicating poverty and poverty reduction policies for about 20 years. And once I read the Mission Possible, which is the Green Climate Action Plan, I knew that I was definitely a Green and needed to run.
Thank you. So what are you expecting from this election, this federal election 2021?
This election, we know we're not going to form government. Because it was called as a snap election, we don't have candidates running in every riding. However, what we are looking at doing is increasing the Green presence in Parliament. So it would be a win even if, we had our leader elected in Toronto Centre. I think there's a couple of seats that we are a shoe-in for. And we need to ensure that diverse voices are brought during debate and in the conversation. Whether that's from a climate perspective, as a lot of the Greens like to focus on, or whether it's from diverse candidates of lots of different ethnocultural backgrounds. And so we know that this is something that needs to be had, and we're certain that Green voices can and should be heard front and center. And so getting 2-3 more candidates into Parliament would mean the world to us.
Amanda, you are a politician, you are a passionate social worker. You must be very much engaged in political or community works, and particularly during this election period when you are campaigning for the federal election 2021. So what are you hearing from the people? What are their major concerns?
Probably 3 main concerns that I hear. People are very concerned about the long-term care that their parents or grandparents are receiving. Obviously during COVID, we saw that for-profit organizations had very high rates of COVID, whereas city-run kind of social homes had much lower rates. I've also heard a lot about climate change and environmental issues. People are concerned with the wildfires that are happening all around the globe, from British Columbia to Ontario. I've met people who have lost loved ones in those fires, and that's truly heartbreaking, because we could be investing, instead of in fighter jets, which we've allocated billions of dollars to buy, we could be spending that money on planes that scoop up water and put out fires. The last issue, but not in importance, would be affordable housing. We've seen a huge boom in house prices over the last few years, even through COVID, for people who are looking at getting into the market, people who are looking at purchasing condos, And even the rental prices have doubled and tripled in some cases. So affordable housing is key to people's minds, and we can definitely fix this. We have a great platform on investing in co-op housing and ensuring that there's additional stock put onto the market, because that is how we bring prices down, is by increasing the number of units available.
Amanda, we have seen that last couple of days or couple of weeks, different political parties, they have released their party's platform. We have seen that Green Party, your party, has also released their platform. What are the main focus of your party's platform? And we have seen that in that platform, you or your party has mentioned about democratic reform. What does it mean? What are the issues that you would like to address to focus on that democratic reforms?
So our platform is created definitely with an environmental lens, because these issues can be addressed in many different ways, whether it's environmental racism, whether it's overconsumption, which leads to additional waste. And so our pillars are, dignity of life, accountability, and justice. Now, one of the interesting things that you had mentioned is democratic reform. Well, when the Liberals came into power in 2015, that was part of their party platform, that they were going to, that election was going to be the last under first past the post system. They did a massive study, had, scholars and legal folks and ordinary Canadians, some of whom I know live in this riding, that participated to give their opinions on the best way that we can reform our democracy. That being said, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, decided that he didn't want to move forward with that promise that he had made Canadians and put it to the side. So first past the post is our current electoral system. And so that means that whoever gets the majority of votes in a particular riding wins that seat, and they can form government. Now, for those who have voted, a lot of times they feel that their vote isn't heard because there is no representation of that voting bloc that they voted with that's represented in the House of Commons. Some of our democratic reform also talks about lowering the voting age to 16. This is important to me personally because as a young person, I was a teen parent. And my whole life at that time was governed by policies, federal and provincial policies. And so I've been working on that since I was a teenager, encouraging young people to vote, but also lowering the voting age because young people do pay taxes, they work, they have the right to drive, you're able to rent an apartment, you may be raising a family, and those voices need to be heard. And especially when we're talking about things like climate change, these are issues that our children are going to inherit, the ramifications of our lack of political action in the past. And it's really concerning to many young folks. They don't see the action being taken to ensure that they have a healthy, livable environment in the future. And if we had their voices, then they would be able to have their say on what kind of future they want.
Thank you very much, Amanda. In Canadian politics, unfortunately, still women are underrepresented. In politics, what are the biggest challenges women face today?
Well, I agree with most of the women that were on your program on the Women in Politics panel. Some of the challenges that we face are financials. So that could be barriers. There are women who are brilliant, but are also the head of their households. And so raising children and working in politics, because it's often, 12, 14-hour days, may not go hand in hand, and finding flexible childcare is quite a challenge. So you definitely need to have a spouse that's supportive. A lot of men are also used to having women not voice their opinion and to be quite docile in public. And this is probably a challenge for some of the, opinionated and vocal women. We've seen even Justin Trudeau release some of his members of his caucus because they stood up for what they thought was fair and equitable. Jody Raybould, Jane, and Selena as well. And these are strong women, and it was clear to me that from a feminist perspective, you want to hear those voices and those concerns instead of shun them away and say, you know what, if you're not going to agree with me, you need to leave. That's not democratic, and it's also not feminist. Women often speak for marginalized folks as well, because we are often the ones in the roles that do the caregiving. So if we're talking about youth, if we're talking about animals that can't speak, if we're talking about underrepresented folks in Parliament, whether it be their religious status or their ethnocultural background, these voices need to be heard. And often women are great listeners, and we love to hear opinions. And so when you sit and listen to constituents, you can hear what they're saying and then bring those voices to the table. And it doesn't just have to be focused on, what everybody's saying around at the golf club. You get a much more diverse perspective when you bring women into the mix.
We often say that Canada is multicultural. Diversity is our strength. How important is the presence of ethnic groups or multiculturalism in Canadian politics?
We can't use multiculturalism and inclusivity as buzzwords. I mean, that is just that's not justice, right? And as Canada grows and our population grows, all voices need to be represented. So women from diverse backgrounds are strongly to encourage, if they align themselves with our value system, to join with the Greens. Often women need to be asked several times, again and again, if they would like to join a political party. It's very few women that will step up and say, oh, well, it's my turn to speak. And so I think all parties need to do a better job at speaking to and speaking with folks in diverse communities, whether that be geographical, whether that be religious or cultural, to ensure that everybody's voices are heard, because Canada is not a predominantly white society anymore, especially in urban areas. And so if folks have insights onto their particular needs, if they have a candidate that isn't willing to listen, then they're just shut down. And so reaching out, if anybody wants to run with the Greens, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will do my best to support you.
Okay, let me ask you one thing. What would your party do differently if they get the mandate of the Canadian people?
The one thing I do have to say is often other parties have looked to the Green platform in previous years to build their policies. Because Greens have always been at the forefront of, kind of pushing the boundary on social justice and environmental wisdom, often our policies are taken and put in the next election into the policies of other parties. But as our leader used to say, she would say, take it, run with it, just go for it, put it into action. Ideas don't need to be owned. And so we do see the infiltration slowly into other parties. But under a Green government, we would see massive tax reform. We would see more decorum in the House of Parliament, and we would also be having a focus on climate justice. One of the things that Greens have been standing for is financial conservative policies so that things are balanced out. It may look like within the 4 years of that spectrum that the budget may not balance, but when you look at long-term costs of poverty, when you look at long-term costs of the healthcare system, these pay off in the long term. And forecasting is often done by political parties just for their 4-year term. But our policies are long-reaching, and we know we have to take a broader lens when we're looking at developing the nation that we want.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Amanda, when we talk about politics, we talk about community work, we often hear from the community people that they don't like people, whether be in politics or in community work, those who are seasonal. I mean, during the election period or during the campaign, we see many people, those who are running or those who are supporting, they are quite visible. But after election, most of the time we don't see them. They are not visible. So what is your plan, what you would like to do, or if you would like to advise for other candidates or those who are interested in politics, what they should do after election or when there is no election time?
First, I'll speak to the folks who aren't me. A lot of times running in elections is absolutely draining, and I see a lot of people getting burnt out and actually getting a little disenfranchised from the process because they have put in so much effort, and they didn't get their seat. That male or female, it doesn't matter. It is a very hard thing to do, to be questioned constantly. And working in community, you're working to serve. But when you're running for election, you're constantly criticized, and that can take its toll on people's ego. So a lot of people pull back. One of the other challenges that people may face after going into politics. So regardless of whether you're burnt out or not, people should still stay involved in their community. I ran again because I gave my promise to the folks of this area to fight politically for the green values, for 4 years. And this election was called quickly after 2 years. So I'm here back again. But being involved in community is key for anybody looking to build their community and the resilience of their community. You get to know folks, and people learn to trust you because they know who you are as a person, or they may not trust you because they know who you are as a person. And so after this election, granted, let's hope we don't have any more lockdowns that prevent me from doing work. I will remain in the community working with co-ops to ensure that they can apply for the grants that they're eligible for to help green their spaces. I will also be continue the work in the butterfly way, so planting native plants and species, working on food stability and security, advocating at the city level and the provincial level for lands to be designated as urban garden areas. I'm quite a gardener myself, and food security can be heavily addressed if we opened up some of our green space for folks to grow their own food. So these are things that I'll remain involved in. I'm not going anywhere. Even though some of my signs have been taken down, which may have been because I was a woman, who knows. I'm not going anywhere, and you'll still see me in community. I've been doing a lot of work with youth, mentoring youth as well, so with a focus on the green economy, jobs, and education that will get you into the labor market that has a very strong future. And I do that mentoring, ad hoc as needed. And I found this group called Enviro Muslims that are looking to green mosques, and they have grants available for people to build more environmentally friendly mosques. So let's say put solar panels on, or to do a green roof, or perhaps a community garden, ensure recycling facilities exist. And so this group I'm definitely going to engage with more and ensure that the imams and the mosques in the area are able to access those funds and resources that they provide as well.
Amanda, I'm sure that your campaign is going quite well, and you must be meeting people from all walks of life. So when you are meeting people, what are you hearing these days during your election, and why do you think that people should vote for you? Do you have anything to share with our audience?
I think the big thing that I've heard is that people don't feel heard. You know, Greens respect diversity of thought, of opinion, of economic status. It doesn't matter. Everybody should have their chance to be heard and listened to. And, you know, as somebody who's always in community and I love to debate and discuss, I'm always here for that. And as your member of parliament, I would certainly be bringing that through town hall sessions, you know, Zoom conversations, and really engaging to know what the pulse of the community wants and needs. The other thing is I'm here. I'm local. I'm not a couple ridings away, you know, where you wouldn't be able to find me. And, you know, as somebody who has lived in this community, I value what we see happen in this community, the community building, the volunteerism, and ensuring that small businesses are supported locally. This is something that I would like to bring as your member of parliament, not just for strong climate action, but for justice for all.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me again.
Dear viewers, thank you very much for staying with us. In our next show, we'll talk about some other issues with our new guest. Until then, please take care and stay well. Bye-bye.